Welcome to the Emancipated Mind Show. My name is Anneshia Freeman. I'm also known as the locksmith because I make keys for locks in the mind. I'm an award-winning master-level therapist, and I also have an MBA. I'm the creator of a cognitive restructuring program entitled The Lies That Bind. This show exposes and challenges dysfunctional unconscious beliefs that cause people to engage in self-defeating behaviors repeatedly despite the consequences. This show is streamed live via Facebook and YouTube every Thursday from 7 o'clock p.m. to 7:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, welcome to the Emancipated Mind Show. Hello, my name is Anneshia Freeman. I'm also known as the locksmith because I make keys for locks in the mind. Welcome to episode 17 of the Emancipated Mind Show. This is a show that exposes the root causes of many problems that people face. Problems such as self-sabotage, procrastination, people-pleasing, dysfunctional relationships, perfectionism, addictions, low self-esteem, codependency, and unrealistic expectations. Tonight, the topic is dysfunctional relationships. So there's a lot of different subtopics up under the umbrella of dysfunctional relationships. So tonight, the topic is, or the subtopic is, the trust factor. It's actually a chapter in my book entitled What's Really Going On. This is volume 1 of this book. It's available on Amazon Kindle for immediate download. You can download it. It's online. The paperback version will be back in stock in January of 2023. So in a few weeks. And so I'm going to talk about trust and how a lot of people keep finding themselves in dysfunctional relationships because they were never taught about how to use trust as a principle. So in this chapter, in my book, The Trust Factor, all of my chapters start with an opening quote. And so this particular chapter, the quote is an English proverb. It says, "It is equal failing to trust everybody and to trust nobody." So a lot of individuals go from one extreme to the other. They either blindly trust people without getting to know those individuals, or they go to this other extreme of isolating and saying, I don't trust anyone. And they isolate and keep everybody out of their lives. They don't have an inner circle. It's just them, they're by themselves. But that's not a good way to live. It's a very lonely way to live. So in my chapter in this book, I start out by saying that a common statement that I hear in my work as a master's level therapist and as a life coach, I often hear people say, "Miss Freeman, I don't trust anyone." And they make this statement usually based on past experiences with untrustworthy, deceitful people. And my response to them is, the trust issue is more likely with yourself. You don't trust yourself to protect yourself. You don't trust yourself to get to know people before giving them access to your life, before giving them a front row seat in your life. You don't trust yourself to get to know people before you open your heart to them. And so a lot of individuals are under the mistaken impression that others are the problem when it's actually their own unconscious belief system, and that they haven't been trusted. And the fact that they haven't been trusted how to use trust as a principle. So I struggled with that same tendency in the past. I didn't do what Maya Angelou says. Maya Angelou says, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. I didn't know how to do that. And so in the past, before I did an enormous amount of cognitive restructuring on myself, I'm the first client of my program, The Lies That Bind, and I did a lot of cognitive restructuring on myself. These are my belief system cards, and I had to do a lot of work because in the past, this is about 22 years ago, I would make some very, very big mistakes. For example, I would hear someone gossiping. And so this person would be telling me everyone's personal business. And for some strange reason, when they got through telling me everyone's personal business, I would feel the need to share some of my personal business with this individual. And then later, when I found out that this person had shared my business with others, I would act indignant and hurt. And then I would make the same statement that people have made to me as a therapist. I would say, that's why I don't trust people. That's why I stay to myself. And so now I understand what the problem was. I didn't trust people's unaddressed issues. Like, and this is not judging the person who struggled with gossiping. We all have issues we have to work through. We don't have the same issues. And there's usually tendencies at times, I don't want to say usually, at times, there's a tendency for individuals to, or some individuals to harshly judge others who have issues they don't struggle with. So it's when I say I didn't trust the gossiper's issue, I didn't know that, hey, this person has an issue that they haven't worked through. I didn't know how to say this to myself. This person has an issue they have not either acknowledged or they know they struggle, but they're not willing to work on it. And so that's not character assassinating a person. That's just making an observation from which I should have made an informed decision not to share any of my personal business with that individual. See, years ago, I couldn't trust myself to do that. So if someone now, but today I can, because I understand how to do what Maya Angelou says. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. That doesn't mean people can't change, but it does mean that if an individual does not demonstrate that they've made any changes in a particular area, you should trust their issue and you should trust what their issue makes them do and govern yourself accordingly. Meaning now, if I meet an individual who struggles with gossiping, I know not to share any of my personal business with that individual. We can talk about the price of gas. We can talk about the weather. We could talk about a television show, but we won't be talking about any of my personal business because I have learned how to use trust as a principle. And so in the article, I go on to talk about how in the past, before I did a lot of work on my belief system, I used to meet individuals and I would label these individuals as friends or significant others without getting to know who they were. And so then when I got hurt, when I would later find out that they struggled with certain issues, like they were either manipulative or untrustworthy, I would be indignant. And then I would say, you see, that's why I don't trust people. That's why I stay to myself. And it was several dysfunctional unconscious beliefs at work. One of the unconscious beliefs is don't trust anyone. Now, some individuals may say, well, that belief would protect a person, right? It'll keep a person from making themselves vulnerable to others' unaddressed issues. But that's not how these dysfunctional unconscious beliefs. These are also known as lies. Whenever you hear me use the terms lies, issues, unaddressed issues, or the buttons people push, as I use those terms interchangeably, I'm referring to dysfunctional, unconscious beliefs that cause people to engage in self-defeating behaviors repeatedly despite the consequences. So a lot of individuals who struggle with this dysfunctional belief, don't trust anyone, they may consciously know that, but there's a lot of ways that this belief affects individuals that's unconscious. in my program, The Lies That Bind, one of my mottos is the job of the lie is to prove itself true. Now, it's an oxymoron, but the job of the lie is to prove itself true. So if a person struggles with the lie, don't trust anyone, this belief will make the afflicted individual do things to verify the belief. Meaning, from time to time, people who say, I don't trust anyone, they'll come out of isolation and they will start engaging with people. This belief will make them ignore red flags. They will ignore the issues that they see. Some of the issues are glaring that other people have, or the issue will make them label someone, friend or significant other, that they met a week ago. Then when they discover, oh, this person is not perfect, none of us are, but they'll say, oh, well, this person has this issue, or they'll get hurt, the individual that they connect with too soon, who has all these red flags that they didn't get to know, when the person violates them, then they say, that's why I don't trust people. The belief has proved itself true. And so the individual will go back into isolation for another period of time. But the need to socialize and interact with others is a basic need. It's a need that's mediated by a part of your brain. So after a while, they're going to start feeling lonely and depressed, and they will want to engage with people. But if they don't learn how to use trust as a principle, the same thing will happen again. They'll meet people, they'll ignore red flags, or they'll label someone friend or significant other before they get to know them. And another issue is that a lot of individuals have not been taught how to set and enforce boundaries. So that means that they put themselves at the mercy of other people's unaddressed issues, because it doesn't matter how healthy and or unhealthy a person is, you need boundaries. You need to set and enforce boundaries. A lot of people use that word, but they've never been taught how to set and enforce boundaries. So if they can't trust themselves to put up parameters around themselves, letting people know what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, then they're at risk. But they don't know that's what's happening. They think these other people out here have all this power to hurt them, to manipulate them, to control them. So they say, you know what, I'm just gonna isolate. And that's when another dysfunctional unconscious belief enters the equation. Personal safety requires isolation. That's a dysfunctional belief. So a person will be like, you know what? I don't trust anyone. And in order to be safe, I'm going to isolate. Even people who struggle with both of these dysfunctional beliefs will from time to time come out of isolation long enough to verify why they should go back into isolation. But this is unconscious. People are not aware that's what's going on. They actually think it's a coincidence that they keep having these bad experiences with people, with relationships. But it's dysfunctional beliefs and lack of boundaries and not understanding how to use trust as a principle. Meaning now when I hear somebody gossiping, I use trust. I trust that person. I trust that person has not addressed that issue. And I trust myself not to share any of my personal business with that individual. That doesn't mean I can't interact with that individual. It just means our conversations are going to be very shallow and surface, right? That's using trust as a principle, right? And I have learned to earn people's trust and that people have to earn my trust, because it's equally dysfunctional for a person to struggle with the villain belief There's a villain belief. There's a victim belief of a dysfunctional belief, and there's the villain version. Some people struggle with the villain version. People must trust you even if they don't know you, or they must trust you and you've violated them repeatedly in the past. That's another extreme of the dysfunction. Maybe I'll do a Facebook Live episode on that belief one day, but we're focusing on this one. Don't trust anyone. So some people who have this dysfunctional belief that they shouldn't trust anyone, they also have the unconscious belief your personal safety is not important. Now, that may seem contradictory, but it's not. So this is how this works. If an individual was programmed during the formative years, and that's usually when these beliefs are implanted into a person's mind, during those critical foundation years, by how they're treated and by what they observe. The brain is developed, the mind is programmed. So a lot of times people have been raised who struggle with this issue, don't trust anyone. They've been raised in an environment in which their personal safety was not prioritized. So they had some bad things happen to them. No one protected them. So they have not been taught how to protect themselves. So they developed their own mechanisms, which was isolation, not interacting with people. But this same belief, your personal safety is not important, will cause an individual to move someone into their home that they met a week ago. And then when that person hurts them or robs them and clears out their house, then they tell everybody, I should not have opened up my heart and my home to that person. I should have never trusted that individual, and that's why I stay to myself. And I'm gonna from now on, I'm not gonna have anything to do with people. They don't understand everything that's going on is based on a collection of dysfunctional beliefs. Because if the individual didn't have these dysfunctional beliefs, first of all, they would have got to know a person before they allowed an individual to move into their home. They would have had rules, like if they were going to let someone stay with them, they would have had a lease agreement, all in writing, but a lot of people, because of these dysfunctional beliefs, your personal safety is not important. They let things happen. It's unconscious. They wouldn't walk into a room and say, hello, I believe my personal safety is not important. So I don't take my personal safety into consideration when I make decisions. They wouldn't say that because the belief is unconscious. But a lot of people make decisions that do not take their personal safety into consideration. And then they get hurt, they get violated, and then the other belief pops up. That's why you shouldn't trust people. You shouldn't trust people. Every time you try to trust somebody, you get hurt. Every time you try to engage with people, you end up getting hurt. But the problem is the dysfunctional belief. And I have learned to give people time to show me who they are. Because like what Maya Angelou says, when someone shows you who they are, believe them, it takes time. People send their representatives, even people who are very transparent and really authentic in their presentation. We put our best foot forward. When we meet someone, we don't usually give them a list of the unaddressed issues that we're still working through, or our character defects that we need to improve on. We don't usually tell a person that on a first date. Or if a person has an issue with being dishonest, they don't introduce themselves to someone and say, hello, I'm a very dishonest person. They wouldn't do that. If there's a person who's an extortionist, they don't put that on their resume. So we have to give people time to show us who they are. But a lot of individuals have not been taught that. So they take people at face value. I remember when I was working on my MSW, I had a class where we would have a question posed to us online before the class met that evening. And we would talk about the question, we would have to post our answers, and we would have a discussion during class. So one of the questions was, Do you blindly give people trust, or do you withhold trust until you get to know a person, or until they earn your trust? I was shocked at how many of my classmates came to class that evening and said, I bestow trust freely on people. But they also told these horror stories about how many times they had been violated by people that they had freely bestowed trust upon. Then I've heard a couple of them, then a couple of them in the class said, well, a couple times I've freely or blindly bestowed trust on an individual, and I was rewarded, by that person's character. That person proved to be trustworthy. But the ratio was like 80-20. 80% of the time that they freely bestowed trust on people, they got violated. And so I'm laughing, but it's really not funny. It's sad that a lot of individuals, me included, because I didn't learn this until about 22 years ago. I'm in my 50s. I'm 58 years old. I didn't start learning about these dysfunctional beliefs and how to use principles such as trust and courage and responsibility, because it's my responsibility to protect myself. It's my responsibility to get to know people before I extend my trust. And then even as I get to know people, I don't just after a while say, okay, well, here's all my trust. No, they can earn my trust in increments, and when I start seeing red flags, I either withdraw some of the trust, or I redefine the relationship and put up boundaries to protect myself. I don't have to put a person out of my life because they're not perfect, because there are no perfect people. I'm not perfect. People have to put up boundaries, to let me know what they like and don't like, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And I have to do the same thing. And that's how we can enjoy each other's strengths and assets and protect ourselves from each other's weaknesses and liabilities. Unfortunately, a lot of us haven't been taught that. Some of us grew up in environments where we saw people being mistreated and violated by others that they called friends. Some of us grew up in environments where we saw individuals being mistreated by family members. We grew up in environments where we witnessed people being hurt by people they called friends. So we weren't taught there's a way to be safe and protect yourself from other people's unaddressed issues. Like giving people time to show you who they are before you give them a front row seat in your life. And when they show you who they are, like Maya Angelou said, believe them the first time. But a lot of individuals, they don't do that. A person will show them that they're untrustworthy, and then they will give that person an opportunity to hurt or violate them again. It's like some individuals be like, well, maybe you didn't really mean to do that. Maybe, you were just having a bad day. Maybe you didn't know that I really care about you, so I'm going to show you. And so they give people chance after chance after chance after chance to hurt them. And so when they finally get fed up, they kick that person out of their life. They go into isolation. But the need to interact socially and be around other people will make them come out eventually. And if they still struggle with this issue, your personal safety is not important, then once again, they'll meet someone and let that person into their life with no terms and conditions, no boundaries, no parameters, right? No rules about how you must treat them. Because people have rules about how you have to treat their carpet. A lot of individuals have rules about how people have to treat their carpet, but they don't have any rules about how individuals have to treat them, because they were never taught that they could do that. And because a lot of times they have dysfunctional unconscious beliefs that tell them you don't have a right to protect yourself. You don't have a right to set boundaries. Yes, you do. You have a right to get to know a person. You have a right to give people time to show you who they are. And if they try to move the relationship too fast, like if you meet someone and you put them in an acquaintance category, but they trying to move too fast and want to be in a friend. Like if I meet someone and I consider them an acquaintance and they're telling people that I'm their friend, I may not embarrass them in front of people if I feel the need to correct them. Like if they're saying it in a situation where I feel like it needs to be made clear there, I will. But I will pull a person to the side or call them later and said, you introduced me to, this individual as your friend. And I just want to make sure you understand our relationship. I consider you an acquaintance. And then I explain to them the criteria that a person has to meet to be in a friendship category with me. And I let them know, I don't know you like that. Because people that I call friend, I have expectations for. And the people who call me friends, they have a right to have certain expectations. But we've talked about that. I remember when me and a young lady decided we wanted to be friends, and this is after I had been doing some work on myself, and she had been doing some work on herself, and we had been healing and growing and developing. We met at a breakfast rest spot. I don't want to say the restaurant because you're not supposed to say certain names if you're not affiliated with them on the live streams. So we met at this particular restaurant. And we sat there for about an hour and a half. We ate our breakfast and we sat there the rest of the time drinking coffee and talking about our definition of friend to make sure we were on the same page. And we also talked about the expectations we had. And we didn't have expectations that we was always going to be hanging out because we were both very busy. In fact, we were able to say, okay, we might be a good fit for a friendship because we're both busy. We're both the type, we don't need to be up under other people. We too busy. We got goals and dreams and we're making them happen. And we don't have time to be talking on the phone all the time and hanging out all the time. That's just not who we are. And so, but a lot of people, they never had those conversations. So then when they get hurt, or when they feel like their needs are not being met, or they feel like their expectations are not being met, they go back into isolation. They're like, you know what? That's why I don't trust people. That's why I stay to myself. So this belief, personal safety requires isolation, and this belief, don't trust anyone, will send them right back into isolation. When the truth is, you don't have to isolate to be safe. You just got to use trust as a principle. Stop trusting people you don't know. And then when they hurt you, say, I don't trust people. So I'm going to read the functional belief that challenges the lie, don't trust anyone. And then I'm going to read the functional belief that challenges the lie, personal safety requires isolation. There are some people in this world who are undeserving of trust. They are mean, manipulative, callous, and selfish, but they are not everyone. Your sample size is too small to classify everyone as untrustworthy. And for anyone who's watching the live stream who may not be familiar with the term sample size, that's a research term. So it's like if a lot of people will hear the unemployment rate. And so when that, the unemployment rate is based on a sample size, like a certain number of people who were asked if they were working at a particular time. But it has to be a big enough number of people who are interviewed or asked that question. And the people who are asked, it has to be like a representative of people. It has to represent the population overall. And then, they can generalize the findings, right? But a lot of people will meet 2 or 3 people and say, who've hurt them, and they say, you can't trust anyone. So that's what that means. Your sample size is too small to classify everyone as untrustworthy. You don't know everyone in your neighborhood. You don't know everyone in your city. You don't know everyone in your state. You don't know everyone in this country. You don't know everyone in the world. So your experiences with people, you're making this general statement. A lot of people make that general statement. You can't trust anybody. Your sample size is too small to generalize your experiences. It is. You should stop hanging around snakes in snake pits expecting to find bunny rabbits. And what that means is, I've had to say that with a lot of people I've worked with, because they will hang around with people who have these street names, such as Shady Grady, Tricky Ricky, Canine, Snake, Lowdown. Yes, I knew someone in the streets named Lowdown. So if you hang around people like that, then you can expect to be violated, because they're telling you who they are with their nickname. If you are a loving, caring person, then you should find some other loving, caring people to have in close proximity to you. You may have to deal with untrustworthy people in passing or in general, but not in your personal, private life. Most of your lack of trust is with yourself. You have not been able to trust yourself to protect yourself by carefully selecting your associates. Start earning your trust. Trust is earned incrementally over time, not demanded. Choose carefully. You don't have to trust people you meet. I went to a place where they ship packages recently, and I take a lot of different packages because I have a lot of products that I sell online and I have to ship them. And so there's usually, most people who work there know me and they know how to package my stuff and ship it. But this must have been a new person because I hadn't seen him. And he was fumbling a little bit, like he didn't know what package to put the product in. So I was giving him instructions. And so after he, weighed them and he was printing out the labels that go on top of the package to ship them, he had printed my receipt and he had the labels in one hand and my packages was laying there that he needed to put the labels on. And he handed me my receipt and I stood there. I said, yeah, I'm gonna wait till you put all the labels on the package and then, set them over there. I do that all the time, right? Even the people who know how to package my stuff, and they know I do that, and they hurry up. They be like, because they know I'm not going anywhere until you put the labels that go with each package, because I'm not shipping everybody the same thing. I'm making sure that you didn't mix up any of these packages and the labels are going on the right package. And so the gentleman who was working behind the counter, he looked at me, he said, oh, you don't trust me? I said, absolutely not. I said, I don't know you. I said, you don't have to trust me because you don't know me. And he looked in surprise. And because that's how a lot of people don't know. You have a right. You don't have an obligation to trust a stranger. We don't have, that's why they have contracts. That's why they have agreements. We don't have to trust people you don't know. Trust, and you can, and if you want to, and it works for you, go right ahead. But it may be better. You may find it more beneficial for you and safer for you to use boundaries to protect yourself, to give people time to show you who they are, because if they're wearing a mask, the mask will slip from time to time. Those are called red flags. A lot of people ignore them. Pay attention to them. That doesn't mean you have to villainize people. That doesn't mean you have to kick people out of your life and have nothing to do with them because you saw one or two red flags. It just means that you should make an informed decision based on how many red flags you see and how serious they are. And if those individuals will respect the boundaries that you set in place to protect yourself from those red flags. Meaning, if you meet somebody and they like to get into arguments with strangers, like they make little comments or be rude to people and y'all hanging out, you may want to tell that person, when we go places, like we go out for coffee or we go out, you can't act like that when you with me, because you're going to cause some problems and then I'm going to be in the middle of it. And if that person responds by saying, this is who I am, this is who I am, you'd be like, okay, well, I believe you. I believe you. And I thank you for being honest with me. You don't have to trust that person Like that person is telling you, this is who I am, and this is how I'm gonna act. This is how I act all the time. And you're like, okay, so now you have to trust yourself not to go out in public with that individual. I have told people, I mentor a lot of people, I have told people who were making progress on certain, self-defeating behaviors that put themselves at risk. And me, if I'm hanging with them, I'll let them know. Like, if you continue doing such and such, like, I'm not going to go anywhere with you. We're not meeting for coffee out in public, because if you're doing ABC to in your personal life and you're upsetting these other people, right? And then you want to be in a public place with me, and one of those people happen to see that you're disrespecting or violating, they see you, now I'm caught in the middle of some drama. See, I trust myself to tell people that. I sure do. But I had to learn how to do that. I had to learn how to say, that don't work for me. I had to learn how to vet people before I even went on a date with them. You got to pass 2-3 phone screens before you even meet in person. I had to trust myself. I had to trust myself that when somebody showed me who they were, I trust myself to believe them. It doesn't mean they can't change. Every now and then, I may, I may talk to someone on the phone or be somewhere where they're at, like a public event or something, and talk to them for a few minutes to see if there's been some progress, because I have progressed over the years. I'm not the same person I was 22 years ago or 20 years ago or even 15 years ago. But if I see the same traits and the same issues, I'm like, okay, I believe that they still at that point. And they have a right to be any type of person they want. They have a right to live their life any way they want. Like, I've worked with some individuals who would be, just really try to character assassinate somebody in my office. And I let them know that person has a right to be who they are, to act how they want to act. The problem is you in the equation. Why are you still with that person? Why are you still engaging with that person? Why are you still trying to make that person change instead of respecting their right to be who they are? I had to learn that. That's using trust as a principle. So I'm going to read the functional belief that challenges the lie, personal safety requires isolation. I do not have to hide from life and people in order to be safe. As I learn to trust myself to protect myself, I will be able to interact with various types of people in various situations without fear. As I learn to make better relationship choices, and as I learn to pay attention to the clues and warning signs that others give as to the content of their character, I will be able to make better decisions as to how closely I choose to associate with individuals. I refuse to continue to hide from the world as if I am at the mercy of the decisions of others and hiding is my only refuge. I can spot manipulators and abusers, and I can protect myself from them. It's not as if certain individuals don't give ample warnings that they are predators. I will no longer hide from the world as a means of protection. And so, with regards to the dysfunctional belief that we're covering today, don't trust anyone. As I said earlier, it starts with you being able to trust you, to make good decisions, to vet people, to believe people when they show you who they are, to set boundaries with people, to disconnect from people when you see you've made a mistake. Because I don't care how careful you are and how carefully you vet people, there are some people who are award-winning actors and actresses. They have not officially won any awards, but they should have. So sometimes you can do your due diligence and think you're really getting to know a person, and then you let them into your life, and later you find out, okay, I made a mistake. You have to trust yourself to say, I made a mistake, and disconnect from that person See, that's another aspect of trust, because you're not going to always get it right, because there's some people who can who wear a mask very well. There's some good actors and actresses out here. And you can do your due diligence, and from time to time, you still can make a mistake and enter into a relationship with someone and later find out, okay, I made a mistake, right? But can you trust yourself to admit you made a mistake? Can you trust yourself to disconnect from that person once you see that you have made a poor choice? And this is the final point I want to make. Can you trust yourself not to beat yourself up for making a mistake? You're a human. You're a human being. Now, I know that might be some brand new information for you, but you're a human being, and all humans make mistakes. So if you have put your trust in someone and realize you made a mistake, can you trust yourself to say, I made a mistake? Can you trust yourself to redefine a relationship? Can you trust yourself not to beat yourself up, not to personalize or internalize that other person's issue that you had to disconnect from? The trust factor. Again, that's an article. That's one of the chapters in my book, What's Really Going On. You can download it immediately on Amazon Kindle. It has 31 articles, cognitive restructuring articles that were all featured in a bi-weekly column that I had for a particular newspaper for several years. So that's all for this episode 17 of the Emancipated Mind Show. If you would like more information about my work, you can visit my website, Anneshia.consulting.com. I will put the link to my store page in the comments, and you can actually purchase my workbook, and that comes with both sets, 2 sets of 100 cognitive restructuring belief system cards. I also have other workbooks on my store page, such as the adult reenactment of the childhood script, and my workbook, My Unaddressed Issues Make My Budget and My Schedule. Each one of these dysfunctional unconscious beliefs make demands on people's time and on their money. As I said, I'm out of stock of the paperback. It'll be back in stock in January of this book, Volume 1, What's Really Going On, but you can obtain it immediately on Amazon Kindle. You can download it to your device, your Kindle device. And so that's all for this episode. I look forward to seeing you next week. Join me next Tuesday. I'm doing a series entitled The Lie is Lying to Me, where I take one dysfunctional unconscious belief and I break down the dialogue, the unconscious dialogue that belief has with the individual who's afflicted. And I'll be back here next Thursday for episode 18 of the Emancipated Mind Show. Look forward to seeing you next week. Have a good evening. Thank you for watching the Emancipated Mind Show. Join me every week live on Facebook and YouTube on Thursdays from 7 o'clock p.m. to 7:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For more information about my products and services, feel free to visit my website, AnnesiaConsulting.com, or my website, AnnesiaSpeaks.com. I can also be reached via email at afreeman@AnnesiaConsulting.com. I'll see you next week.